As a forest ranger and archaeologist, I have dedicated my life to exploring, preserving, and understanding the delicate ecosystems and rich histories that our planet has to offer. My work has taken me to some of the most remote and breathtaking locations in the world, but nothing could prepare me for my journey into the heart of the Amazon rainforest. This vast and complex ecosystem, teeming with life, is also a place fraught with dangers, both natural and man-made. My experience there opened my eyes to the horrifying realities that threaten this irreplaceable environment, the Amazon rainforest. Often referred to as the lungs of the earth, spans over 5.5 million square kilometers across several countries, including Brazil, Peru, and Colombia. It is home to more than 10% of the known species on our planet, as well as countless indigenous cultures that have lived in harmony with the land for centuries. However, the beauty and richness of this region mask deep-seated issues that have been exacerbated in recent decades by deforestation, illegal logging, and mining activities. The consequences of these actions are devastating, not only for the flora and fauna, but also for the very fabric of indigenous life. My journey began with the intent to study ancient civilizations that once thrived in the Amazon. Archaeological findings suggest that advanced societies existed long before European colonization, utilizing the rainforest's resources sustainably. However, as I ventured deeper into the forest, my focus shifted dramatically from exploration to survival. The allure of the Amazon's beauty was soon overshadowed by the chilling realities unfolding around me. Upon arriving, I was struck by the vibrant colors and sounds of the rainforest. The cacophony of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the distant calls of monkeys created a symphony that seemed almost magical. Yet, as I delved deeper, I began to witness the stark contrast between the rainforest's natural wonder and the destructive forces at play. My first encounter with the aftermath of illegal logging was both shocking and disheartening. I stumbled upon a clear-cut area that had once been a thriving ecosystem. The trees, some hundreds of years old, lay felled and discarded like matchsticks. The ground was scarred, and the rich biodiversity that had flourished there was now replaced by a silence that felt oppressive. It was as if the very soul of the forest had been stripped away, leaving behind a haunting emptiness. I stood there, grappling with the reality that this was not just a loss of trees. It was a loss of homes for countless creatures, and a devastating blow to the indigenous communities that relied on the forest for their survival. As I continued my journey, I encountered more signs of destruction. I met local indigenous people who recounted their struggles against encroaching industries. They spoke of their sacred lands being invaded, their resources exploited, and their way of life threatened. Their stories were filled with a profound sense of loss and despair, and they urged me to share their plight with the world. I felt compelled to become their voice, to highlight the horrors they faced daily. One evening, as I set up camp in a small clearing, I reflected on the weight of what I had witnessed. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the forest. Suddenly, the sounds of the jungle shifted. The vibrant chorus of life was replaced by an unsettling stillness. It was a stark reminder that, beneath the beauty of the Amazon, dangers lurked in the shadows. I felt a chill creep down my spine, igniting a primal instinct for survival. The following days were filled with both exploration and trepidation. The deeper I ventured into the Amazon, the more I encountered signs of environmental degradation. Rivers that once flowed with clear water were now tainted with chemicals from mining operations. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke from burning forests. Each sight felt like a punch to the gut, further reinforcing the horror of what was happening in this breathtaking landscape. One day, while traversing a particularly dense section of the forest, I came across a group of illegal loggers. Hidden behind the undergrowth, I observed as they felled trees with reckless abandon, their chainsaws roaring like angry beasts. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but my curiosity urged me to stay. I knew I had to document this atrocity, to gather evidence of the ongoing destruction. With my heart racing, I quietly took photographs, hoping to capture the truth. Suddenly, one of the loggers glanced in my direction, and I froze. Our eyes met, and in that split second, I realized how vulnerable I truly was. The tension in the air was palpable. After what felt like an eternity, I turned and sprinted back the way I came, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of my camp, where I collapsed, breathless and shaken. The incident left me rattled, but it also ignited a fire within me. I understood that the horror I was witnessing was not just a personal nightmare. It was a larger narrative of destruction playing out across the Amazon. I resolved to return to my community and share these stories, too. Raise awareness about the plight of the forest and its inhabitants. Each day in the Amazon became a testament to the urgent need for change, a call to action that I could not ignore. As I prepared to leave the rainforest, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. I had witnessed the beauty and the horror of the Amazon, and I knew that my experiences would forever shape my perspective. The rainforest, with its vibrant ecosystems and rich cultural heritage, was in grave danger. The stories of the indigenous people and the cry of the forest needed to be heard. In conclusion, my journey through the Amazon rainforest illuminated the urgent need for awareness and action. The horrors I encountered, illegal logging, environmental degradation, and the struggles of indigenous communities are not isolated incidents. They are part of a global crisis that demands immediate attention. As a forest ranger and archaeologist, I am committed to advocating for the preservation of this vital ecosystem, ensuring that the voices of those who call it home are amplified. The Amazon is not just a forest. It is a living testament to the resilience of nature and humanity. We must work together to protect it before it is too late. To truly understand the significance of my journey through the Amazon rainforest, it is essential to delve deeper into not only the world around me, but also the characters who shaped my experience. The rainforest itself is a rich tapestry of life, a complex ecosystem that breathes and pulses with an energy that is both humbling and awe-inspiring. However, it is the individuals I encountered, each with their own stories and struggles, that brought this vibrant world to life and highlighted the urgent need for its preservation. The Amazon is often romanticized as a pristine paradise, but the reality is far more nuanced. The forest is a battleground where the forces of nature clash with the relentless advance of human industry. This stark contrast is embodied in the figure of Javier, a local indigenous leader I met during my time in the rainforest. Javier was a man of immense strength and quiet dignity, deeply connected to the land and its history. He carried the weight of his ancestors on his shoulders, their stories intertwined with the very roots of the trees he fought to protect. Javier's community had lived in the Amazon for generations, practicing sustainable agriculture and maintaining a harmonious relationship with the environment. However, in recent years, they had faced increasing pressures from outside forces: loggers, miners, and agricultural developers who saw the forest as merely a resource to exploit. Javier spoke passionately about his people's connection to the land. "We are not just caretakers. We are part of this forest," he told me, his eyes reflecting a fierce determination. "When they destroy our home, they destroy us." His words resonated deeply with me, emphasizing the intrinsic link between culture and environment. Javier's community had a profound understanding of the forest, each tree and river holding significance in their collective memory. This relationship contrasted sharply with the indifferent exploitation I witnessed among the loggers. They saw the forest as a commodity, devoid of the life and stories that made it sacred. Another pivotal figure in my journey was Sophia, a biologist working tirelessly to document the biodiversity of the Amazon. Sophia was a passionate advocate for conservation, dedicating her life to studying the flora and fauna that called the rainforest home. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and she guided me through the intricacies of the ecosystem, explaining the delicate balance that sustained life in the forest. Every species plays a role, she explained, her voice filled with urgency. The loss of even one can have catastrophic consequences. Sophia introduced me to the extraordinary variety of life within the Amazon. We explored the forest together, identifying plants with medicinal properties and observing the unique behaviors of wildlife. Her knowledge served as a poignant reminder of what was at stake. As we walked, I could see the forest through her eyes, a vibrant, interconnected web of life that was both fragile and resilient. She often spoke of the importance of preserving this biodiversity, emphasizing that the Amazon was not just a national treasure, but a global one. Yet, as we explored, the shadows of destruction loomed large. We encountered areas where illegal logging had devastated the landscape, leaving behind a haunting reminder of what once thrived. Each felled tree felt like a loss, a wound in the fabric of the ecosystem. Sophia's frustration was palpable as she recounted the bureaucratic hurdles she faced in her efforts to protect the forest. "It's like shouting into a void," she lamented. "The people in power don't see the value in what we're losing." As I absorbed the realities shared by Javier and Sophia, my understanding of the Amazon deepened. The forest was not just a backdrop for adventure. It was a living entity, filled with stories, struggles, and triumphs. The characters I met were not mere spectators. They were key players in a larger narrative of resistance against the encroaching forces of destruction. Their passion, resilience, and commitment to their land inspired me to take action. The Amazon also revealed its darker side through the stories of those who had been directly impacted by environmental degradation. I met families who had lost their homes and livelihoods due to the relentless advance of agriculture and industrial development. One family, displaced from their ancestral land, shared their story over a flickering campfire. The father spoke of the challenges they faced in adapting to a new life, away from the forest that had provided for them for generations. "We are not just losing our home. We are losing our identity," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. Such encounters were a stark reminder that the consequences of destruction extend beyond environmental loss. They impact the very essence of culture and humanity. Each person I spoke with had a unique story, a thread woven into the larger tapestry of the Amazon. They were not just victims. They were warriors fighting to reclaim their home, their identity, and their future. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself increasingly immersed in the struggle for the Amazon. The stories of Javier, Sophia, and the families I encountered fueled a fire within me. I began to understand that my role as an archaeologist and forest ranger was not limited to studying ancient civilizations or preserving ecosystems. It was about being an advocate for those who had no voice. It became my responsibility to share their stories, to amplify their cries for help, and to raise awareness about the urgent need for change. Through my experiences, I also began to recognize the interconnectedness of our world. The health of the Amazon is not just a local issue. It is a global concern. The destruction of this vital ecosystem impacts climate change, biodiversity, and the livelihoods of millions. The urgency of the situation became clear as I realized that my own actions could contribute to a larger movement for change. In this context, my journey through the Amazon was not merely about exploration. It was a profound awakening. The characters I met and the stories they shared deepened my understanding of the stakes involved. I was no longer a passive observer. I was part of a collective effort to protect a world that was rapidly vanishing. The Amazon rainforest, with all its beauty and horror, became a symbol of resilience and hope, urging us to confront the challenges ahead. As I prepared to leave the rainforest, I carried with me not just memories of its beauty, but also the weight of its struggles. I understood that the fight for the Amazon was far from over, and it would require unwavering determination and solidarity from all of us. The stories of Javier, Sofia, and countless others would serve as my guiding light, inspiring me to advocate for a future where the Amazon and its inhabitants could thrive, free from the threats that sought to destroy them. As I delved deeper into the heart of the Amazon rainforest, the conflict between preservation and exploitation became increasingly palpable. Each day brought new challenges, revealing the stark reality of a battle that was not just environmental, but deeply rooted in cultural, economic, and political tensions. What I initially thought would be an exploration filled with wonder soon transformed into a confrontation with the harsh truths of modern-day colonialism and ecological devastation. The first indication of the brewing conflict came during a community meeting that Javier organized in his village. The gathering was meant to unite the community against the encroaching threats to their land, but the atmosphere was charged with tension. Villagers expressed their fears about illegal logging and the destruction of their ancestral territory. Javier stood at the front, trying to galvanize support, but the frustration in the room was palpable. Many were torn between their traditional ways of life and the allure of quick money offered by loggers and developers. "What can we do?" one elder lamented, his voice heavy with despair. "They have money, power, and machines. We have only our voices," Javier countered. "We have more than that. We have our land, our culture, and the will to protect it. But we must act together. We can't let them divide us." His words resonated with some, but others remained skeptical. The divide between those wanting immediate gain and those yearning for long-term sustainability was widening, threatening to fracture the community. As the meeting unfolded, it became evident that the conflict was not merely with external forces, but also within the community itself. The pressures of modern life were encroaching on traditional values, and the younger generation, eager for opportunities, seemed willing to overlook the long-term consequences of their actions. This generational divide added another layer too. The conflict, complicating efforts to unite against the common enemy. In the following days, I witnessed firsthand the tangible effects of this internal strife. While conducting fieldwork in a nearby area, I encountered a group of young men preparing to join a logging operation. Their laughter echoed through the trees, a stark contrast to the somber discussions I had heard in the village. They welcomed me, boasting about the money they could make, completely unfazed by the destruction they were facilitating. "This is our chance," one of them exclaimed. "Why should we suffer for the past when we can build a future?" I felt a mix of anger and sadness as I listened to their reasoning. It was evident that the allure of financial gain was blinding them to the larger implications of their actions. The rainforest was not just a resource. It was a living entity that sustained countless species, including their own community. I tried to engage them in conversation, but they brushed off my concerns, dismissing the warnings about environmental degradation as irrelevant to their immediate needs. The conflict escalated when Javier and a few dedicated villagers decided to take a stand against the logging operations. They organized a peaceful protest to draw attention to the issue, inviting the media and environmental organizations to witness the plight of their community. As the day approached, tensions ran high. Some villagers supported the protest, while others voiced their opposition, fearing retaliation from the loggers or the authorities. On the day of the protest, I joined Javier and the villagers at the entrance to a logging site, armed with banners and a determination to be heard. The atmosphere was electric, charged with hope and anxiety. As news crews arrived, I could see the villagers' spirits lift. This was their chance to share their story with the world. However, as we stood there, a group of loggers arrived, their demeanor aggressive. They shouted insults and attempted to intimidate us, but Javier stood firm. "We are here to protect our land and our future," he declared, his voice unwavering. The confrontation escalated as the loggers threatened to call the authorities, insisting we had no right to interfere with their work. The tension reached a breaking point when one of the younger men from the village, frustrated by the taunts, stepped forward. "You're destroying our home. Don't you care about what you're doing?" The logger responded with a sneer. "This isn't your land anymore. It belongs to whoever can pay for it." In that moment, the conflict crystallized before my eyes. It was not just about trees. It was about identity, belonging, and the fight for survival. Javier and his supporters faced not only the external threat of the loggers, but also the internal struggle to maintain their cultural heritage in the face of modernization. As the standoff continued, I felt a sense of urgency. I knew that the longer this confrontation lasted, the more likely it was to escalate into violence. I stepped forward, hoping to mediate. "Let's talk. Violence won't solve anything. We need to find a way to coexist," I urged. My words, hung in the air, met with a mix of skepticism and hope. Eventually, cooler heads prevailed. The loggers' foreman agreed to speak with Javier, albeit reluctantly. They retreated to a nearby area where they could discuss the situation away from the heated emotions of the crowd. I joined them, eager to witness the negotiation. The dialogue was tense, filled with accusations and counter-arguments. But I could see that both sides were beginning to realize the futility of violence. Javier spoke passionately about the importance of the forest to his people, emphasizing that their existence was intertwined with the land. The foreman, initially dismissive, began to listen. "We're just trying to make a living," he said, his tone softening slightly. "But I understand what you're saying. Maybe there's a way to work together." The discussion marked a turning point, highlighting the complexities of the conflict. It became evident that while the immediate threat of logging loomed large, the underlying issues were rooted in a lack of understanding and communication. As the dialogue continued, I saw the possibility of a compromise emerging, one that could benefit both the villagers and the logging company. However, this moment of potential reconciliation was fragile. The pressure from outside interests was mounting, and the urgency to exploit the forest remained. As we wrapped up the meeting, I could feel the weight of responsibility on all our shoulders. The path forward would require persistent effort, open communication, and a commitment to coexistence. As I left the protest that day, the conflict felt far from resolved. The challenges ahead were daunting, and I knew that Javier and the villagers faced an uphill battle. But the seeds of understanding had been planted, and I felt hopeful that with continued dialogue, they could forge a path toward a more sustainable future. In the days that followed, I immersed myself in documenting the stories of the villagers and the beauty of the Amazon, hoping to shed light on their plight. I realized that this conflict was not just a local issue, but a microcosm of the larger struggle facing indigenous communities worldwide. The fight for the Amazon was emblematic of the fight for identity, culture, and survival against the relentless tide of industry and progress. Through these experiences, I learned that the development of conflict is often layered and complex. It is not merely a battle between good and evil. It is a struggle for understanding, respect, and coexistence. The characters I met, Javier, the villagers, the loggers, were all part of a larger narrative, each with their own motivations and desires. As I continued my journey, I carried their stories with me, determined to amplify their voices and advocate for the preservation of the Amazon rainforest. The story of my journey through the Amazon rainforest is not just a linear tale of a forest ranger and archaeologist confronting environmental destruction. It is woven with subplots and complexities that reveal the intricate layers of human experience intertwined with the fate of the forest. These subplots reflect the tensions between tradition and modernity, the clash of cultures, and the personal struggles of individuals caught in a larger conflict. One of the most poignant subplots emerged through the relationship between Javier and his estranged brother, Miguel. As the leader of the village, Javier embodied the struggle for cultural preservation and environmental stewardship. However, Miguel had chosen a different path, aligning himself with the logging industry. Their sibling rivalry illustrated the broader conflict within the community, where differing values created rifts that threatened to undermine their collective efforts. Their story unfolded during a tense moment at a community meeting when Miguel arrived, confident and brimming with the success of his new job. The room fell silent as he entered, the air thick with unspoken words. Javier's expression hardened, and I could sense the tension crackling between them. Miguel, with his flashy attire and self-assured demeanor, represented the allure of modernity and financial success. "You're wasting your time, Javier," he scoffed. "These protests won't change anything. The forest is just a resource for us to use." Javier's response was a mixture of anger and sorrow. "You've sold out, Miguel. This isn't just about money. It's about our people, our heritage." The clash between the brothers served as a microcosm of the struggle facing the village. How to balance the demands of modern life with the values of their ancestors. As the conflict between the brothers escalated, it became clear that their relationship was not just a personal issue, but reflective of a larger societal divide. Many younger villagers were captivated by the promises of wealth and opportunity that industrialization offered, while the elders, led by Javier, fought to maintain their traditions and connection to the land. This subplot deepened the narrative, illustrating the complexities of family loyalty, identity, and the generational gap in understanding the significance of the rainforest. Another subplot involved Sophia, the biologist, who was tirelessly working to document the biodiversity of the Amazon. Her research was critical in providing scientific evidence of the environmental degradation caused by logging, but her personal struggles were equally compelling. Sophia had dedicated her life to conservation, often at the expense of her own relationships. Her passion for the forest was palpable, yet it came with a heavy burden. She felt isolated from those around her, particularly from her family, who did not understand her devotion to a cause that seemed distant from their everyday concerns. During one of our discussions, Sophia opened up about her struggles. "I often feel like I'm fighting a losing battle," she confessed, her voice tinged with frustration. "People think I'm obsessed with saving the rainforest, but they don't see the bigger picture. If we lose this ecosystem, we lose everything." Her words resonated with me, highlighting the emotional toll that the fight for conservation takes on those dedicated to the cause. Sophia's subplot intertwined with Javier's as they both sought to galvanize the community's support for environmental protection. While Javier fought for cultural preservation, Sophia championed the scientific aspects of conservation. Their collaboration was fraught with challenges, as they had to bridge the gap between traditional knowledge and scientific research. The tension between their approaches illustrated the complexities of advocacy and the need for a multifaceted strategy to address the issue at hand. As the story unfolded, another subplot emerged through the eyes of the younger generation, particularly through the character of Ana, a spirited teenager who idolized Javier, but found herself torn between loyalty to her community and the allure of modern opportunities. Ana had dreams of becoming a wildlife photographer, and she often accompanied Sofia on her expeditions. Her passion for capturing the beauty of the rainforest was matched only by her desire for a different life, one that might take her far from the traditions of her village. One day, while exploring a particularly stunning section of the forest, Ana confided in me about her dreams. "I want to show the world how beautiful our home is," she said, her eyes sparkling with determination. "But I also want to travel, to explore beyond the forest." Ana's dual aspirations illustrated the struggle many young people face in indigenous communities. Caught between the desire to uphold their cultural heritage and the pull of a world filled with opportunities, her subplot added layers to the narrative, reflecting the generational tensions inherent in the larger conflict. Ana's journey mirrored the broader struggle for identity in a rapidly changing world, where the forces of globalization threatened to overshadow local cultures. The complexity of her character made her relatable, illustrating the universal struggle of finding one's place in a world that often demands conformity to external expectations. As these subplots intertwine, they painted a rich picture of the Amazon's social dynamics. The conflict was not merely about environmental degradation. It was about identity, belonging, and the future of a community grappling with change. Each character's story contributed to a larger narrative, emphasizing that the fight for the Amazon was not just a battle against external forces, but also a struggle to reconcile different perspectives within the community. The complexities of these personal stories heightened the stakes of the central conflict. As Javier and Miguel continued to clash, and as Sofia fought to gain support for her research, the urgency of the situation became increasingly clear. The logging operations were expanding rapidly, and the window for action was closing. The characters were not just facing external threats. They were also dealing with the internal conflicts that threatened to fracture their unity. Ultimately, these subplots illuminated the intricate relationship between individuals and their environment. The struggle for the Amazon was not solely an environmental issue. It was a deeply human one. The characters I encountered revealed the multifaceted nature of conflict, where personal aspirations, cultural values, and environmental stewardship intersected in complex ways. As I continued my journey through the Amazon, I realized that each subplot enriched the narrative, providing depth and nuance to the overarching conflict. The stories of Javier, Miguel, Sofia, and Ana highlighted the challenges of preserving a culture while navigating the complexities of modernity. Their struggles and triumphs underscored the urgency of the fight for the Amazon, reminding me that every voice mattered in this critical battle for the future. In conclusion, my journey in the Amazon rainforest was not just about witnessing the beauty of nature. It was about understanding the struggles of its people. The subplots and complexities I encountered deepened my appreciation for the interwoven narratives of culture, identity, and environmental conservation. Each character, with their unique stories and challenges, contributed to a broader understanding of the conflict at hand, reminding us that the fight for the Amazon is ultimately a fight for humanity itself. As my time in the Amazon rainforest continued, the interplay of conflict, subplots, and complex relationships reached a critical turning point that would change the course of my journey and the fate of the forest itself. The pressures mounting from illegal logging and the internal divisions within the community had created an atmosphere of urgency and uncertainty. It was clear that the time for decisive action was fast approaching. The turning point began when Javier and I were alerted to an impending logging operation scheduled to take place just a few kilometers from the village. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a mix of fear, anger, and determination among the villagers. The proposed site was not just any patch of forest. It was a sacred area, rich with cultural significance and biodiversity. It was where the community conducted rituals, where medicinal plants grew, and where their ancestors were said to have walked. The thought of this land being desecrated was unbearable. In the days leading up to the scheduled operation, Javier called for an emergency meeting. The stakes were higher than ever, and this was a moment that would require the full commitment of the community. As we gathered in the village center, the tension in the air was palpable. Villagers exchanged worried glances, and the weight of the decision ahead loomed over us like a thick fog. Javier stood before us, his voice steady yet filled with urgency. We cannot let this happen. This land is our history, our identity. If we allow it to be destroyed, we lose a part of ourselves. His words resonated with many, but there were still those who were hesitant. The lure of quick profits from logging was strong, and some villagers feared the repercussions of standing against powerful interests. Amid the unease, Miguel arrived, his presence instantly igniting a new wave of tension. As Javier's estranged brother, Miguel represented the conflicting values of tradition and modernity. He had become a spokesperson for the logging industry, and his arrival at the meeting felt like a direct challenge to everything Javier stood for. "Look around you," Miguel said, gesturing dismissively at the concerned faces in the crowd. "This is not about preserving a few trees. This is about survival. We can't cling to the past while the world moves on. Embrace change or be left behind." Javier's response was immediate and passionate. "And at what cost, Miguel?" "At the cost of our culture, at the cost of our ancestors. We can find a way to coexist without sacrificing our future." The exchange between the brothers was electric, highlighting the internal conflict within the community. The villagers were caught in the crossfire, unsure of where to place their loyalty. As tensions mounted, a decision was made. The community would stage a protest at the logging site to prevent the operation from beginning. It was a bold move, one that carried significant risks, but it also represented a unified stand for their rights and heritage. The villagers rallied together, driven by a shared sense of purpose and urgency. The day of the protest arrived, and an air of determination enveloped the community. We gathered early in the morning, armed with banners and signs that proclaimed our message: protect our forest, protect our future. The atmosphere was electric, filled with a mix of apprehension and hope. As we made our way to the logging site, I could feel the weight of history on our shoulders. This was not just a protest. It was a stand against the forces threatening to erase our identity. When we arrived at the logging site, the scene was stark. Heavy machinery idled ominously, ready to begin the destruction. The loggers looked on with a mix of confusion and annoyance as we set up our demonstration. Javier stepped forward, his voice steady as he addressed the crowd. "We are here today to protect our home. This land is sacred to us, and we will not allow it to be destroyed for profit." As we held our ground, the atmosphere grew tense. The loggers, backed by their foreman, began to approach with a confrontational stance. "You have no right to block our work," the foreman shouted, his voice dripping with disdain. "This land has been bought and paid for. You're wasting your time." But the villagers stood firm, united in their resolve. As the confrontation escalated, I could see the emotions on the faces of both the villagers and the loggers' fear. Anger, desperation. It was a powerful reminder that this conflict was not merely about land. It was about identity, survival, and the future of a community. In the midst of this charged atmosphere, something unexpected happened. Anna, the spirited teenager who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. With a camera slung around her neck, she raised her voice, capturing the attention of both the crowd and the loggers. "You may see this as just a job," she said, her voice trembling yet defiant, "but this is our home. These trees are our history, our medicine, and our life. We will not let you take them away." Her words reverberated through the crowd, igniting a wave of emotion. The villagers cheered in support, and I could see the loggers' resolve waver. Anna's bravery had shifted the dynamics of the confrontation, reminding everyone present of what was truly at stake. With the momentum shifting in our favor, Javier seized the moment. "We are not against you as people. We are against the destruction of our land. We want to find a solution that respects both our ways of life and yours." The sincerity of his words hung in the air, creating a space for dialogue amidst the chaos. As the confrontation continued, the foreman realized that the situation was escalating beyond his control. He stepped back, signaling to the loggers to halt their machinery. The dialogue that followed was tense but necessary. Javier and the foreman began to negotiate, seeking a middle ground. While the loggers were initially resistant, the passion and unity of the villagers began to chip away at their defenses. The turning point came when it became evident that the community was willing to offer a compromise. Instead of outright confrontation, they proposed a sustainable logging plan, one that would allow for selective logging while preserving key areas of cultural and environmental significance. This proposal surprised everyone and revealed the depth of the villagers' commitment to finding solutions, rather than engaging in a battle that could lead to violence. As the foreman considered the proposal, the atmosphere shifted from hostility to cautious optimism. The realization that there was a potential pathway for coexistence began to take root. The villagers, once divided, stood together, united by a shared vision of a future that could honor both their traditions and the realities of modern life. The negotiation was not without its challenges, but the turning point had been achieved. The loggers agreed to halt operations temporarily while discussions continued, recognizing that a solution was needed that would respect the rights and heritage of the community. As we left the logging site that day, the air was thick with possibility. The tension that had once threatened to tear the community apart had transformed into a collaborative spirit. Javier and Miguel, though still at odds, found common ground in their shared love for the land. Sophia's research was now more critical than ever, as it would provide the necessary data to support sustainable practices. The turning point marked a new chapter in our journey. It was a moment that illuminated the complexities of the conflict and highlighted the power of unity in the face of adversity. The community's resolve to protect their heritage, coupled with the willingness to engage in dialogue, signified a significant shift in the narrative. In the days that followed, I continued to witness the evolution of the community's efforts. The protest had galvanized support not only from within, but also from outside organizations that recognized the importance of the fight for the Amazon. As the villagers began to collaborate with researchers and conservationists, a sense of hope emerged. The turning point had transformed their struggle into a broader movement, one that sought not just to protect the forest, but to redefine their relationship with it. Ultimately, the turning point was a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, change is possible when individuals come together with a shared purpose. The Amazon rainforest, with all its beauty and complexity, continued to serve as a backdrop for this unfolding story, a story of resilience, hope, and the enduring human spirit. The turning point at the logging site marked a significant moment in the ongoing struggle for the Amazon rainforest, but the consequences of that day rippled through the community and beyond, shaping the future of both the villagers and the forest. The aftermath of our protest brought about a series of reactions that would ultimately redefine the dynamics of power, identity, and resistance in the region. In the immediate wake of the protest, the atmosphere in the village transformed. The villagers, previously divided by internal conflicts and differing priorities, began to coalesce around a shared sense of purpose. The temporary halt of logging operations had sparked a renewed energy among community members, who started to view their struggle not just as a defense of their land, but as part of a larger movement for indigenous rights and environmental justice. Javier emerged as a unifying leader, channeling the collective energy into organized efforts. He called for regular community meetings to discuss strategies for sustainable development and conservation. The villagers began to brainstorm solutions that balanced their traditional ways of life with the economic pressures they faced. This shift in focus was palpable, as people who had once been hesitant to engage in activism now found their voices empowered by the solidarity they had experienced during the protest. However, the victory was not without its challenges. The logging company, faced with the unexpected resistance, responded defensively. Their initial reaction was one of hostility. They threatened legal action against the villagers, insisting that their operations were legitimate and sanctioned. This response highlighted the stark power imbalance that existed between the local community and the corporate interests threatening their land. The threat of legal repercussions loomed over the villagers, introducing a new layer of complexity. To their struggle, as news of the protest spread, it attracted the attention of environmental organizations and media outlets. Reports began to circulate about the community's stand against logging, framing the villagers as defenders of the Amazon. This newfound visibility had a dual effect. On one hand, it brought much-needed support from outside groups eager to assist in the fight for preservation. On the other hand, it also provoked the ire of the logging company and its stakeholders, who were determined to discredit the villagers and maintain their operations. Sophia, the biologist, played a crucial role in leveraging this attention. She worked tirelessly to compile data on the environmental significance of the areas targeted for logging. Her research highlighted the biodiversity at stake, providing scientific backing to the villagers' claims. As she presented findings to environmental organizations, she became a pivotal figure in connecting the community with broader networks of advocacy. The collaboration resulted in a series of workshops and educational sessions aimed at empowering the villagers with knowledge about sustainable practices and environmental stewardship. Yet, the pressure was mounting. The logging company began to mobilize its resources, employing public relations strategies to reshape the narrative. They portrayed the villagers as misguided and misinformed, suggesting that their actions would jeopardize local jobs and economic growth. This narrative aimed to fracture the community's newfound unity by pitting their aspirations against the perceived benefits of industrialization. The villagers found themselves not just fighting against logging, but also against a barrage of misinformation that threatened to undermine their efforts. The internal tensions also resurfaced, particularly with Miguel, who had initially aligned himself with the logging interests. As pressure escalated, Miguel faced a dilemma. On one hand, he was tempted by the financial gains that the logging industry promised. On the other, he witnessed the strength of community, solidarity, and the passion of his brother, Javier. The conflict within Miguel intensified as he began to question his choices. The struggle for the Amazon became a personal journey for him, forcing him to confront his values and the implications of his actions. In a surprising turn of events, Miguel approached Javier in a moment of vulnerability. "I never thought I would see you fight like this," he admitted, his tone softer than before. "Maybe I've been wrong." This moment of reconciliation was powerful. While tensions remained, it opened a dialogue that had been absent for so long. The brothers began to explore potential avenues for collaboration, recognizing that their shared heritage and love for the land could transcend their differences. As the protest and subsequent actions gained momentum, the community began to organize. A series of educational initiatives aimed at raising awareness about their struggle and the importance of the rainforest. They invited local schools to participate, engaging the younger generation in discussions about conservation and the significance of their cultural identity. This outreach not only strengthened community bonds, but also empowered the youth, like Anna, who found their voices as advocates for their home. Anna took a leading role in these initiatives, using her photography to document the beauty of the Amazon and the stories of her people. Her work resonated with many, capturing the essence of the village's struggle and the urgent need for preservation. Through social media and local exhibitions, she showcased the interconnectedness of culture and environment, drawing attention to the villagers' plight and garnering support from allies beyond the rainforest. As the villagers worked to solidify their efforts, the logging company became increasingly aggressive. They hired private security to intimidate the protesters and sought legal avenues to regain control over the operations. The threat of violence loomed. I found myself deeply concerned for the safety of the villagers who had courageously stepped into the spotlight to defend their land. The situation reached a critical juncture when the company announced plans to resume logging operations, disregarding the protest and the community's calls for dialogue. The villagers, fueled by a sense of urgency and injustice, organized a larger protest that would coincide with the resumption of operations. This time, they planned to involve not just the community, but also allies from surrounding areas, environmental groups and media representatives. On the day of the planned protest, tensions were high. As we gathered at the logging site, the sense of solidarity among the villagers was palpable. Javier, Ana, Sofia, and others rallied the crowd, reminding everyone of the stakes involved. Today, we stand not just for our land, but for the future of every generation to come, Javier declared, his voice cutting through the air, but the logging company was prepared. As we approached the site, we were met with a heavy police presence, called in to maintain order. The atmosphere grew tense as the officers faced off against the villagers, who were determined to make their voices heard. The confrontation felt like a clash of ideals. On one side, the community fighting for their rights and heritage. On the other, the forces of industry and control data. As the standoff unfolded, I could see the emotions on both sides: fear, determination, anger. It was a defining moment that encapsulated the larger struggle facing indigenous communities worldwide. The villagers stood firm, united in their purpose, even as the threat of violence loomed. Their courage was inspiring, yet the reality of the situation weighed heavily on me. The consequences of our actions in the days leading up to this moment were evident. The community had transformed, becoming a beacon of resistance and hope. However, the path ahead was fraught with challenges. As we faced the police and the logging company, it was clear that the struggle for the Amazon was far from over. The fight would require not only courage, but also resilience, unity, and a commitment to the principles of justice and sustainability. In the midst of this turmoil, I realized that the consequences of our actions extended beyond the immediate struggle. The villagers' fight for their land was emblematic of a larger movement, a call for recognition and respect for indigenous rights and environmental preservation. The reactions from both within and outside the community underscored the significance of their struggle, reminding us all that protecting the Amazon was not just about saving trees. It was about preserving cultures, identities, and the future of our planet. As the day unfolded, I held my breath, aware that the choices we made would shape the narrative of resistance in the Amazon for years to come. The consequences of our actions would resonate far beyond the forest, echoing in the hearts and minds of those who dared to stand for their beliefs. The struggle for the Amazon rainforest reached a pivotal moment in our journey, one that tested the resolve of the community and brought about profound personal growth for everyone involved. As tensions mounted between the villagers and the logging company, we found ourselves at a crossroads, forced to confront not only the external challenges, but also our internal fears and doubts. This period of overcoming obstacles and fostering growth became a transformative experience for each of us. In the days leading up to the major protest, the pressure on the community was intense. The logging company had ramped up its operations, and the police presence grew heavier, creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. Many villagers, while resolute in their beliefs, struggled with the potential consequences of their actions. What if they faced violence? What if they were arrested? The stakes had never felt higher, and these fears weighed heavily on our minds, Javier as the community leader bore the burden of these anxieties. He often sat in silence, contemplating the enormity of the situation. One evening, I found him, alone by the river, looking out at the water as it flowed steadily by. I joined him, sensing that he needed to talk. "I worry, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if we fail? What if I lead us into danger?" His vulnerability surprised me. Javier had always projected strength and determination, but in that moment, I saw the weight of responsibility he carried. "You're not alone in this," I reassured him. "The community stands with you. This is about all of us, not just you." His eyes met mine, and I could see the flicker of hope igniting within him. That conversation became a turning point for Javier. He realized that leadership was not about being fearless, but about acknowledging fears and rallying others to confront them together. As the protest day approached, I also found myself grappling with my own doubts. I had come to the Amazon to document its beauty and history, but had unexpectedly become embroiled in a struggle for its survival. I questioned my role in this narrative. Was I merely an observer, or could I actively contribute to the fight? The weight of this question hung heavily over me, and I knew that I had to overcome this internal conflict to fully support the community. In the days leading up to the protest, I immersed myself in research regarding indigenous rights and environmental conservation. I connected with activists and organizations who had faced similar challenges, gathering insights on effective strategies for advocacy. This newfound knowledge empowered me, shifting my perspective from passive observer to active participant. I realized that my voice mattered, and I could help amplify the stories of the villagers, ensuring that their fight would be heard beyond the forest. The day of the protest arrived, and the atmosphere was electric with determination. As we gathered, I could sense the collective resolve among the villagers. They had transformed their fears into strength, united by a common purpose. Javier stood before the crowd, his voice ringing with conviction. "Today, we show the world that we will not back down. This forest is our home, our heritage, and we will fight for it." As we moved toward the logging site, the energy was palpable. I felt a surge of pride for the community and for what we were about to undertake together. However, as we neared the site, the reality of the situation began to sink in. The police lined the entrance, and the loggers stood ready to resume their operations. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the sense of purpose that had propelled us to this moment. The confrontation began, and the emotions surged. I saw villagers standing shoulder to shoulder, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. Ona, with her camera in hand, documented the scene, capturing not just the tension, but also the courage of her people. As the police advanced, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. Would we be met with violence? Could we truly make a difference? In that moment of uncertainty, I remembered the conversations I'd had with Javier and the lessons I had learned from the community. This was not just about us. It was about the future of the Amazon, the preservation of culture, and the right to exist in harmony with nature. With renewed resolve, I stepped forward, joining the villagers in their shout for justice. We stand together, I called out, my voice rising above the clamor. We will not be silenced. The protest unfolded with a mixture of tension and hope. As the police attempted to disperse us, villagers held their ground, chanting and raising their banners. The unity of the community was palpable, and I felt a profound sense of belonging. We were all part of something larger than ourselves, a movement that transcended individual fears and desires. Amid the chaos, I noticed Miguel standing to the side, watching the protest unfold. He had been a divisive figure, but in that moment, I saw something shift in him. The expression on his face was no longer one of arrogance. Instead, he looked contemplative. In that instant, I realized that the struggle was affecting him too. He was witnessing the strength of his community, the passion of his brother, and the courage of the youth. It was a moment of reckoning for him, and I hoped he would choose to stand with us. As the confrontation escalated, a pivotal moment occurred. A villager, overwhelmed by emotion, stepped forward and addressed the police. We are not your enemies. We are the guardians of this land. We ask you to think about what you are protecting. This forest is our life. The raw honesty of his words resonated with many, and I could see that they were impacting the police as well. For a brief moment, the lines between us and them began to blur. In the days that followed the protest, the community began to experience a profound transformation. The confrontation had ignited a fire within them, a sense of agency and empowerment that had been dormant for too long. Javier, Miguel, and the villagers began to engage in constructive dialogue, working together to create a sustainable plan for their land. They sought to blend traditional practices with modern conservation techniques, ensuring that their heritage would endure while adapting to the realities of the present. This period of growth was not limited to the villagers. It extended to me as well. I found myself more deeply integrated into the community, sharing their stories through my writing and photography. I organized workshops to help villagers articulate their experiences, ensuring their voices were amplified. In the wider conversation about indigenous rights and environmental conservation, the act of storytelling became a powerful tool for healing and unity, allowing individuals to process their emotions and reflect on their shared struggles. One evening, as I sat with Javier and the villagers around a fire, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The flames flickered, illuminating faces marked by determination and resilience. Javier spoke about the journey they had undertaken together, acknowledging the complexities of their struggles. We have learned that we are stronger together, he said, his voice steady. This fight is not just for the forest. It is for our identity and our future. As I listened, I reflected on how far we had all come. The initial fears and doubts had been transformed into a collective strength that resonated throughout the village. The journey had not been easy, but it had fostered growth in ways we had never anticipated. Each person had faced their own challenges, and together they had emerged more united and empowered. Miguel, too, had undergone a significant transformation. He began to engage actively with the community, advocating for sustainable practices and working alongside Javier. Their reconciliation became a symbol of hope, demonstrating that even the deepest divisions could be healed through understanding and shared purpose. As they worked together, the brothers exemplified the power of forgiveness and the potential for growth amid adversity. As the months passed, the community's efforts began to attract attention from environmental organizations and policymakers. Their commitment to sustainable practices and cultural preservation positioned them as leaders in the fight for the Amazon. They became a beacon of hope for other indigenous communities facing similar challenges, inspiring a broader movement for environmental justice. Through this journey of overcoming obstacles and fostering growth, I learned that resilience is not merely about enduring hardship. It is about transforming struggles into opportunities for connection, understanding, and healing. The fight for the Amazon became a catalyst for change, not only in the forest, but also within each individual who dared to stand up for their beliefs. In conclusion, the journey through the Amazon rainforest was more than a fight against logging. It was a journey of personal and collective growth. The community's struggles, fears, and triumphs intertwined to create a narrative of resilience and hope. Together, we learned that overcoming challenges requires courage, unity, and a commitment to preserving not just the land, but the values and identities that define us. As we moved forward, we carried with us the lessons that would guide us in the ongoing struggle for justice and sustainability in the Amazon and beyond. The tension that had been building in the Amazon reached its zenith on the day of the climactic protest. As the sun rose over the treetops, casting a golden light on the vibrant greens of the rainforest, the villagers gathered at the logging site with a palpable sense of urgency. This was not merely a protest. It was the culmination of months of struggle, fear, hope, and unity. The stakes had never been higher, and the spirit of resilience filled the air. Javier, standing at the forefront, rallied the villagers with a fervor that ignited their passions. Today, we fight not just for our trees, but for our identity, our future. His voice resonated with determination, echoing off the trunks of ancient trees. As the crowd erupted into cheers, I felt a surge of pride and solidarity. Each villager was equipped not only with signs, but also with a shared purpose, a deep-rooted commitment to protect their home. As we approached the logging site, the atmosphere shifted. The heavy machinery loomed ominously, ready to begin its destructive work. A line of police officers stood between us and the loggers, their faces set in grim determination. It was a scene fraught with tension, a stark representation of the battle between corporate interests and indigenous rights. I could feel the collective heartbeat of the crowd, a syncopated rhythm of fear and hope, as we faced down the reality of what was about to unfold. When the police instructed us to disperse, the tension reached a breaking point. "We will not move," shouted Anna, her voice rising above the din. She stood tall, camera in hand, embodying the spirit of the youth who had become the heart of this movement. Her bravery inspired others to step forward, echoing her sentiment. "This land is our home, and we will not allow it to be destroyed." The villagers responded with a chorus of agreement, amplifying the resolve that hung in the air. The confrontation escalated quickly. As the police advanced, the villagers held their ground, chanting slogans of resistance. "Protect our forest. Protect our future." The cries rang out, reverberating through the trees and the hearts of everyone present. The police, determined to maintain order, pushed forward, but the villagers stood firm, their ranks unyielding. The strength of their unity was evident, and in that moment, I understood the power of collective action. The atmosphere grew electric as the conflict intensified. I watched as Javier and Miguel stood side by side, their previous tensions momentarily forgotten, united in their commitment to protect their home. This powerful image symbolized the transformation that had taken place within the community, a testament to the possibility of healing and reconciliation amidst adversity. As the police attempted to create a barrier, a pivotal moment occurred. Sophia stepped forward, armed with scientific data and passion. The destruction of this forest will not only harm our community, it will have global consequences. We are part of a larger ecosystem that needs protecting. Her words cut through the tension, and I could see the police officers momentarily pause, considering the weight of her argument, but the loggers, witnessing the standoff, prepared to take action. They revved their machinery, drowning out our voices, signaling their intent to proceed regardless of our presence. In that moment, fear surged through me. Would we be met with violence? Would the very essence of our fight be crushed beneath the weight of machinery and indifference? In the face of this impending chaos, I felt an overwhelming urge to act. Gathering my thoughts, I stepped forward, raising my camera in an effort to capture the moment. "Let the world see this struggle," I shouted, directing my words to both the villagers and the police. "Let them see the courage of this community." My voice rang out, and I hoped it would inspire those around me to remember the importance of this fight. The villagers rallied around my call, and the atmosphere shifted once again. The focus was no longer solely on confrontation, but on the importance of our message. We were not just fighting against logging. We were advocating for our rights, our culture, and the very fabric of our existence. The momentum shifted, and the police appeared to waver. Then came a moment of clarity. Anna, driven by her passion, stepped forward once more. "We are not against you as people. We are against the destruction of our home. We all have families. We all have futures." Her heartfelt plea resonated with many, and I could see the internal conflict reflected on the faces of the officers. The power of her words was undeniable, shifting the narrative from one of opposition to one of shared humanity. As the police hesitated, we seized the moment. Javier, Miguel, and Sofia stepped forward, initiating a dialogue with the officers. They articulated the community's vision for sustainable development, emphasizing the importance of protecting the forest while finding ways to coexist with modern demands. The conversation was tense but necessary, and I watched in awe as they navigated the complexities of the situation with grace and determination. Over the next hour, the atmosphere began to transform. The officers, once rigid and unyielding, began to listen. The dialogue shifted from confrontation to collaboration, with villagers outlining their plans for sustainable practices and conservation efforts. The loggers, initially steadfast in their resolve, found themselves increasingly isolated as the community's unity became evident. In a pivotal moment, one of the police officers, visibly moved, turned to his colleagues and said, "These people are fighting for their home. We must consider their voices." The shift in tone was palpable. The weight of empathy began to seep into the tense atmosphere, and I could sense the possibility of change. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon with hues of orange and pink, the realization of our collective power hung in the air. It was a moment of triumph, not just for the villagers, but for anyone who believes in the strength of community and the importance of standing up for what is right. The climax of our struggle had transformed from a potential confrontation into a powerful demonstration of unity and resilience. By the end of the day, as the machinery sat idle and the police began to withdraw, a sense of hope permeated the air. The community had stood together, overcoming their fears and doubts. They had emerged not just as defenders of the forest, but as advocates for a sustainable future, illustrating the power of dialogue and understanding in the face of adversity. The climax of our struggle for the Amazon rainforest was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It showcased the power of unity and the importance of standing together in the face of adversity. The confrontation at the logging site was not merely a battle against destruction. It was a transformative experience that brought the community closer and highlighted the significance of their cultural heritage. In the aftermath, the villagers began to engage in meaningful dialogue with both the police and the logging company. They outlined their vision for sustainable development, emphasizing the need for a collaborative approach that respected both their traditions and the demands of modernity. This pivotal moment marked a shift in the narrative. The community was no longer merely defending their land, but actively participating in shaping its future. As the world began to take notice of their struggle, the villagers became symbols of hope for indigenous communities worldwide. They demonstrated that resilience, unity, and the courage to speak out could lead to meaningful change. Through education, collaboration, and advocacy, they forged a path toward sustainability, ensuring that the Amazon would be preserved, not just for themselves, but for generations to come. Months later, the community continued to thrive, embracing sustainable practices that honored their heritage and the rainforest. The bonds formed during the struggle deepened, fostering a sense of belonging and purpose. Javier and Miguel worked side by side, embodying the possibility of reconciliation and shared vision. The Amazon, once a battleground, became a symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to the power of community in the face of overwhelming odds. The fight for the Amazon is far from over, and it needs your voice. Stand in solidarity with indigenous communities and support organizations dedicated to environmental justice. Educate yourself and others about the importance of preserving our planet's ecosystems. Together, we can make a difference and ensure that future generations inherit a world rich in biodiversity and cultural heritage. Join the movement. Your action matters.